This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.
And so each country, there's just different things that you need to understand the dynamics.
Yeah.
The Navajo Nation, you're dealing with the federal government, county government, state government, tribal government.
What a web.
Yeah, it's bureaucratic nightmare. Yeah, so
wrapped up in red tape. You were a mayor, so that must come in handy a little bit. Some of your political background.
Yeah,
you know,
you were the former mayor of what town?
Yeah,
Genola.
Yeah,
the metropolis.
Yeah, all 1,500 of us.
Welcome to the ZuLoo Poodcast, where we talk all things poop, toilets, and sanitation. Through insightful news, impact stories, and quirky humour, we aim to discuss and highlight the critical role toilets play in whisking poop out of our lives, the impact toilets have, or lack thereof, in the health and wellness of humanity, and what ZuLoo is doing to help solve the current global sanitation crisis.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the ZuLoo Poodcast. We have a super awesome episode today. We've got Lonny Ward with CHOICE Humanitarian with us in studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We just had an awesome dinner together and it got me even more pumped for our discussion today because you have so many golden nuggets and I can't wait to hear all about them. Before we do though, I think it's important that you give our listeners a little bit of an overview. Who are you? Who's CHOICE Humanitarian? I mean, for our viewers out there, this is their annual report. It's gorgeous. Like I'm a kind of a book nerd here, so I'm very excited for my copy to dive in. But tell us about CHOICE Humanitarian. Tell us about who you are.
Awesome.
What you do.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. I've been listening to the Poodcast, and you guys always have some amazing guests. So I'm super excited to be here. As you said, my name is Lonny Ward. I'm the Director of Operations for CHOICE Humanitarian. CHOICE has been around for 40 years. The word CHOICE is actually an acronym for the Center for Humanitarian Outreach and Intercultural Exchange.
And you're going to quiz me on that later.
Yep.
You got to say that fast, like 10 times.
Exactly. So, Our vision is to have a world in which people everywhere have a choice and the means to live in peace, prosperity, and freedom.
Amen to that.
I love what I do. I get to work with some of the best people in the countries where we work. We work in 8 countries, in Nepal, which is sandwiched between China and India, in Kenya, in East Africa. In South America, we work in Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru. Then in Guatemala, Mexico, and we recently started working here in the United States in Arizona on the Navajo Nation.
Wow.
So,
what a plethora. Oh my gosh. So many places.
I know it seems like we were talking about during dinner how we tend to focus mostly outside the United States, but we were talking about some of the Indian nations. That's super important.
Yeah. We were really surprised. It was during COVID when we started hearing about the problems with food security down there.
Yeah. And
we put together some food boxes. We had some donors, had a gentleman that brought down potatoes from Idaho, and we took them down there as we saw the needs down there and started talking to the people. We saw that what we do in community mobilization and organization was really needed down there, especially in the western part of the reservation, which actually is called the former Bennett Freeze area. Mm-hmm. So for about 50 years, this area had a moratorium on all development by the federal government. So they could not build, they could not do any infrastructure. And so it's really behind and needs some
over 50
help.
years. You think of all the technological advances that happen, all the developments, right, that we see, and to imagine that on the Navajo Nation. And you mentioned earlier there's a circle of Hopi land right in the middle. To imagine that there's none of that there. Yeah, it just kind of blows my mind. It's so close to home, right? We're here in Utah, and it just seems like stone's throw away that problem is, I don't know, it's there. And I want to talk more about it. But I do also want to clarify, CHOICE is got its hands in everything from sanitation, which is why you're here to chat with us about sanitation related issues, but also food shortages. It's what communities need. Is that right?
Yes, we are a development organization. And so in a nutshell, the way we work is each of our countries has a native team that will work with the communities and find out, what needs do they have. We use the multidimensional poverty index survey, which measures the education and quality of life, sanitation, and nutrition, those types of measurements. And after we've done the survey, then we can sit down with the community leaders and say, okay, here's what we're seeing in your community. What's most important for you? Mm-hmm. And as they decide, then we help them formulate a plan. What resources do you have to bring to bear? What other resources do you need? Yeah. Where can we find those? Are there government agencies that provide those resources? Are there other nonprofit organizations? And what can we do to help? And then we just work with them on those projects. We do a lot of water projects. We do sanitation projects. We do education, whether it be building schools or improving the education system. Wow. A lot of agriculture programs, gardening, small animal production. Yeah. And cultural enhancement, helping them to recognize their culture and how that strengthens the fabric of their society. Wow. And a lot of with gender equity is all mixed in there. Economic development, teaching them how to develop businesses and improve their lives. Mm. So there's a lot. It's kind of a holistic type approach.
Yeah. That is so inspiring.
That's great.
And I imagine that there are a lot of similarities among the 8 countries that you're in, but also a lot of differences because every community is so different, right? And maybe I'll ask a little later if they're, I don't know. I just want to dive in right now. But Darren, you have poo news.
We can defer the poo news till later in the episode. So the viewers that just tune in for poo news, you'll have to bear with us.
Sorry, bear with me while I ask Lonny one more question here, because I just like to dive deep quickly. What are some of those differences that you've seen among the needs of different countries or different communities you've been in?
Well, that's a great question. And one that's really important to ask as you start working in these countries, because what you'll find is if you don't understand the systems that are going on in the countries, you can do more harm than good in trying to do good. A lot of the differences are climatic difference. Like in Bolivia, we work on the Altiplano. So that's right. The valley level is the same height as Mount Timpanogos, the top.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so crazy to imagine that.
In Peru, we work on, ocean level.
Yeah.
Nepal has a tremendous resources, but the government is very, very difficult to work with. And so each country, there's just different things that you need to understand the dynamics.
Yeah.
The Navajo Nation, you're dealing with the federal government, county government, state government, tribal government.
What a web.
Yeah, it's bureaucratic nightmare. Yeah. So
wrapped up in red tape. But you were a mayor, so that must come in handy a little bit. Some of your political background.
Yeah,
you were the former mayor of what town?
Yeah, Genola. Yeah.
The metropolis.
Yeah. All 1,500 of us. It does help. I didn't have any aspirations for political office at all.
Yeah.
In a small community like that, sometimes it's more whose turn is it than who wants to be it,
Yeah.
And, but as you get involved and you go to the meetings and you meet with the different mayors and, I was working with, at the time, Mayor John Curtis and Richard Brunst of Provo and Orem on the BRT program. Obviously, we don't need a rapid transit system in Genola, but we do come to Provo and Orem. And so it's kind of nice to have a rapid transit system taking all the students around so that they're not plugging up the roads so we can drive on the roads.
Absolutely.
But there are dynamics that happen with the community that, as a mayor, I learned how to deal with the different factions, trying to bring people together, help people understand the value of, if we do this project that helps these people, then they'll be excited about this project that'll help you.
Yeah.
And so you're building those coalitions and also learning how to tie in with the local and regional and federal government agencies and utilize those resources too.
Well, listeners, there you have. That's a nugget. That's just a nugget. Just a small little smidge of what Lonnie's here to chat with us about. So let's turn our normal time over to Darren for our Poo News. I'm excited to see what he's prepared. And then we'll dive back in with Choice.
And for our Navajo viewers, I need to apologize. I said Indian nations. It should be a Native American, correct? Is that the right phrase, right?
Yeah. I think that's appropriate.
So anyway, but yeah, with that, if you want to do some Poo News, we can talk about.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I think this is one that came up today. The title of it is, what maybe I can ask you guys, what did people use before toilet paper came around? Has toilet paper always been on the planet?
Well,
what did they use before?
Maybe Lonnie can tell us some of the things he's seen other people use and maybe less developed areas.
Yeah, I've seen different types of vegetation. The burdock leaf is a nice big flat piece. I've seen people use sticks. I've seen people use rocks.
A rock.
Yeah, it says here, this is bigthink.com at the it says, toilet paper is very common in the U.S. and the Western world, but 70% of people on the planet don't use it.
70%? Like that,
wow.
That's a lot, but it also kind of makes sense.
It says Americans collectively use about 36.5 billion rolls of toilet paper every year.
Wow.
It's overwhelming to think about.
But 70% of the world's population doesn't wipe with toilet paper. A lot of times they use bidets, but before bidets and toilet paper, and we'll show you, I'll send you some of these images, but this is
it a hand?
I don't know if
use their hand.
There's not a hand. Although that in an emergency may.
But I read, this was like from my world history class, I don't know, 15 plus years ago, that there was I think it's Greek or Roman practice where you only shake hands or touch hands with your right hand, right? Because your left hand was used for hygienic
purposes,
processes. Okay,
that may be true. That is a tool you can use. This is called a xylospongium, which is it's a
sponge on a stick.
Basically a stick with a sea sponge on it, and used in the Greco-Roman periods.
Oh, all right. So maybe that was like model 2.
Yeah.
They were like, the hand, we got to improve this.
It's like, maybe I want to use my hand for something else, so I'm going to use a stick, right? This is something called I think I'm pronouncing this right, a chugi, which is it's basically a stick. Like these are actual sticks that were flat, made out of bamboo and used in different cultures. I think you were talking about this earlier too.
Hopefully you don't get slivers. That would be
bad. Gosh.
They do have these, little, it says the Roman Greeks also use these rounded, smooth ceramic stones called pasoi. It looks kind of rough on the edges there.
Oh, yeah. I was imagining something a little bit more like sea glass.
Yeah.
Churned and smooth.
Yeah, sea glass would be better. Would be better.
Sea
Moss,
glass is top tier, though.
moss has been used, right? That sounds
Okay.
pretty good.
All right.
I could handle that.
Yeah,
I
a
could handle
little nice moss,
Yeah.
you can see that. And then corn cobs.
Yeah.
This is kind of one of those American legends, like, Grandpa always talking about corn cobs. I mean, I've never
Don't
tried
touch the corn cobs
I've
out in
never-
the field.
I've never tried a corn cob, but I don't know. Have you? Have you ever?
I have not.
Okay.
Not had the pleasure of that quite yet,
No.
Lonny.
Not
yeah.
that you'll admit, but okay.
Yeah, not that I admit. Yes.
I've
think
used sand before,
I think
but
locally here, like lamb's ear is pretty common
Yeah.
among our backpacker community. Just hikers.
lamb's ear, yeah.
Yeah, it's soft.
Yeah.
If you can find lamb's ear, you're in heaven.
Yeah.
It's even better than toilet paper.
Yeah,
Anyway.
why don't they make toilet paper in the same consistency? I guess Charmin tries, right?
There you go.
Kind of missed the mark a little bit, though.
That would be a whole industry. Like, hey, we'll sell you some lamb's ear, and you can grow your own.
Lamb's ear. Yeah, grow your own toilet paper.
Sustainable.
Huh. Now
So
we're
that's
talking.
So that's one bit of poo news. A little educational bit.
Love it.
This is a company called Wasted out of Vermont. They use if you look at it, it looks like a porta potty. Your common looking porta potty, but they don't. Unlike most portable sanitation systems, they don't pump it out and into a truck and haul it down to the wastewater treatment plant.
Wait, is their company Wasted?
Wasted.
Or is it Waste It?
Wasted with a D.
Okay.
Like, all your friends are wasted.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, they've decided, hey, instead of pumping it down to the wastewater treatment plant, we're going to actually collect it and compost it and use it in for fertilizer. And apparently they just raised $7.5 million in seed financing, and they are just going at it.
Awesome.
Wow.
And these are retrofitted porta potties that they've now use to collect it, and then they will create fertilizer and then sell the fertilizer. Right, so it's a business model.
Heyo.
So
Love that.
anyway,
That's
but they
right
are,
up our alley.
but they
there you
are,
go.
they are doing things like that. So these are some forward-thinking people.
Is that something that okay, I'll save this question for later. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So if you're in Vermont, go get wasted.
There you go. We actually did that on the dairy that I managed, except we used it for bedding
For bedding.
for the animals. So we'd take and recycle the manure,
Yeah.
compost it, and it makes a really nice fluffy bedding for the animals.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
I'm shocked.
And
I've
then
never heard of that before.
The excess we would sell to homeowners for mulch and fertilizer,
Yeah.
compost. And it works great.
And that's
Yeah.
your background, right? You would run like
Yeah.
dairy farms. That's your kind of background. I know you have an MBA from where?
BYU.
From BYU,
Yeah.
and then you ran a dairy farm. Was that your family's thing, or
No, I was actually on a couple of them. The first one is the Church's Welfare Dairy in Alberta, Utah. And then I managed the BYU Dairy for 3 years also.
Okay.
You're making all of our ice cream.
Yep.
Yes. All our BYU, listeners are salivating, right?
Yeah. And the chocolate milk and the
chocolate
cookies and cream milk. Yeah.
Oh man. You know what? This is my shame. I'm born and raised in Provo, Utah. Graduated from BYU, and I have never had a BYU chocolate milk.
Oh
I've
my goodness.
I've never had a mint
Well, don't
milk.
worry.
never
I've had enough for you and I both in my lifetime. I love
It's
it.
as good as they say, though,
It
right?
is.
It sounds like a sin. You should talk to your bishop about that.
I know. I've also never been to a BYU football game.
Oh, that is definitely worse.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
probably worse. We're going to be losing.
Sit me down this year at a game with a glass of milk.
There you go.
That
That'll
sounds
be
like
my
a,
2023 resolution.
that sounds like a goal. Yeah. So then you got, maybe tell us, you after BYU, I think you said you had a career change. You were you were running some of these other farms and programs, and then you, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your uncle, was it, that started CHOICE Humanitarian back in the day?
Yeah.
How that started?
My uncle James Mayfield and his partner Tim Evans.
Okay.
Tim kind of got the ball rolling in first Peru and then Bolivia.
Okay.
And then they got together, and that was 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
how time flies.
And mine was kind of an interesting career change. I was, like I said, working with the church, managing the dairies, and I actually got transferred down to California on the almond pistachio farms that the church has. And I worked there for a year and then decided to resign and found a company that was working in Ethiopia. They wanted to take dairy cattle embryos from the United States over to Ethiopia and create a modern dairy there.
It's wild to me. That's wild to me that has to happen, but it makes sense.
And I wish I would have known then what I know now, because we would have done things a lot different. But
in regards to like that might have done more harm than good.
No, it's one of those, you have to learn how to crawl before you try running.
Oh, yeah.
And, milk is 88% water. And so if you want a dairy cow to produce a lot of milk, you got to make sure she's got lots of clean water. And most of the people there in Ethiopia didn't give their cattle clean water all day.
Wow.
They're like, we don't have enough water.
So, to take embryos over there,
it didn't do any good.
Yeah.
A little too advanced for the stage that they might have been in.
Way too advanced, yeah.
Right.
So,
anyway, sorry to divert.
But in the process, I saw this amazing country. Ethiopia is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, and rich resources. And yet the poverty is devastating over there. It's really a big deal. And I came home. I worked with that organization 2 years. I'd go for about 6 weeks, come home for 6 weeks, go back and forth.
Wow.
And then I would write to my wife the emails. When I got back to civilization, we were way out in the middle of nowhere. And then so she created a blog. We called it the Ethiopian Cowboy.
That's awesome.
Unfortunately, we lost the URL, so it's just LonnyWard.com now.
Okay,
but you can go back and read about my adventures in Ethiopia.
Cool.
But in the process, I saw the need for somebody to get involved that knew how to go out and work with these people. In Addis Ababa, in the capital city, I saw all sorts of, it was who's who in all of the nonprofit and that. But you go 200 miles outside, and they'd never seen a white person. So I talked over with my wife, and I said, I need to make a career change. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it took 3 years, basically, before I came across the organization, the Institute for Self-Reliant Agriculture. We did businesses, Feed the World, and our focus was on small-scale agriculture, gardens and small animals, chickens, mainly guinea pigs in South America, rabbits.
It was Feed the World. That was part of the Ethiopia initiative, right?
No.
Okay.
No, Feed the World actually spawned out of what was called the Ezra Taft Benson Food and Agriculture Institute that started at BYU.
Yeah.
And they were in Ecuador and Peru, and then they went to Kenya. And that's where I connected with them. I was actually in Kenya with another nonprofit called Coins for Kenya, doing a dairy goat program over there. And
I've heard of that.
Yeah. So then I worked with the Institute for Self-Reliant Agriculture for a couple of years, and then we joined forces with CHOICE Humanitarian, and that's how I got to CHOICE.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it's a dream come true. I love what I do. I love being out in the rural areas, working with these people. Just the most amazing people in the world.
Yeah.
They just don't have the choices that we don't have. They don't have the resources we have.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, you were talking about how you guys take just a holistic approach and see what the needs in the community are, and here at ZuLoo, we're sort of laser focused on toilets, but the more we get focused on toilets, the more we realize how it impacts just every other aspect of life, and so I think during the dinner you were mentioning a few anecdotes that you were wanting to talk about.
Some crazy stories.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And we're kind of a generalist. I mean, if you were in the construction world, you'd look at us maybe like the general contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we love to collaborate with organizations like ZuLoo because, we can work on toilets and whatnot, but it's not our specialty. We would much rather find somebody who has experience there that can come in and do it correctly.
Yeah, well, that's all we do. So that's all we know how to do.
Yeah.
Toilets.
True.
Anything else? No.
So what I thought I'd do is I'd talk about why it is so important to think about sanitation.
Love that.
And then share with you a couple of stories of experiences I've had. And along the way, it's also critically important to think about the whole system.
Yeah.
And how everything is working in the community and understand why they do things and how they do things. And so the first story I'll tell you is in Kenya. So in Kenya, it rains twice a year pretty hard, and then it's dry.
Yeah.
And so in order for the people to have water, we dig what are called water pans, or they're reservoirs.
Yeah.
And so we had helped this one community dig a nice big one, and then we had dug a trench from the entrance to the reservoir back to the main water channel so it could capture all that water and fill up. And I was over there just as it started raining, the first of the rainy season. I was so excited to go up there. And I go to the reservoir, and there's not much water coming in. I'm like, it's raining heavy. There should be water.
Yeah.
So I walk up to the end of the channel, and they had closed off the channel, and all the water was running down the main channel.
No.
And I'm like, what are you guys doing? We got to capture this water.
We did all this work.
And so as I talked to the community about it, they said, no. People use the channel for their bathroom.
Oh.
Because it's a kind of a lower area, and so it gives them a little bit of privacy.
Yeah.
And so what they do is when the rains first come, they want to wash out the channel, get all that poop out of the channel. Then they will divert the water back into the reservoir.
Interesting.
Oh, it makes sense
Yeah.
when you think about
Exactly.
that. That's how they're utilizing their resources, right? It's actually pretty ingenious to say, let's allocate this one space we know can be washed out instead of just anywhere, everywhere, every man for himself. I mean, it makes some sense to have a designated area for your waste. But boy, yeah, to think that.
So the next step is we need to have you guys come over and put some latrines in.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're there for that. We've actually had quite a few contacts reach out to us about projects in Kenya. And when those stars align, we'll be so excited to, be in that space. And
so the next story I have is actually in Peru, in Peña Blanca. These are up in the high Andes in northern Peru. And we went to this little elementary school there and just had a wonderful time teaching the children, just saying hi and, and just having fun with them.
they're so cute.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I needed to go to the bathroom. So I said, hey, do you have a bathroom? And they're like, yeah, right out there. And they showed me this little latrine building out there. And I open the door and I look in there, and it's one of these that you see in a lot of these countries where they dug the vault or the pit, and then they just poured a concrete slab over top of it with a hole in it that's about 1 foot long and about 6 inches wide.
Okay, a little squat pit.
Yeah, it's a squatty potty, we call them.
Yeah.
But everywhere on the floor around, especially in the corner, were piles of poop.
What?
And my
everybody's
first
missing.
Yeah, it's like, don't they know there's a hole in the middle? But then I got to thinking about it. These are little 5-6-year-old kids.
Yeah.
To me, that hole, it's a pretty good sized hole, but to them, it's like they could fall in. Yeah.
I know.
And so
something could be in there and grab them.
Yeah. It's dark
All
in
the
there.
toilet demons.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no,
so
but
obviously
that's serious.
they like
That's real.
stay away from that hole. Do it in the corner.
Exactly.
We did have, this is like maybe not the best story to bring up, but we did have a Poo News story a few weeks ago of a man who lost his car keys in a toilet on a by road, and he went in after him and got stuck.
Oh no.
And he couldn't get out. And I don't know, I can't remember if somebody just found him like another.
They found him like 3 hours later. He was calling and,
Oh, yeah, he had a cell phone with him so he could, he had reception. But it would be scary. Because the pits are deep, right? Yeah. We think that a grown person could get out of that. And maybe if you could jump high enough among the sludge. But to, have a child fall in that, how devastating would that be for the community? That makes sense that they would advise them, we could, you might think that they'd
scrape it over in.
Well, that's the thing.
You take on their chore.
That's an example of you taking what you think is a great solution, but then locally, in this case, the children were of an age where they weren't getting close to that hole. But the other example, you're talking about how they were like, oh no, this is how we think we're going to use this, you know, and it's totally different than maybe you had thought.
Yeah. And the next anecdote I have actually goes kind of with your Poo News.
Right. You're talking about your rock story.
So in Bolivia, and let me back up just a little bit. When I was in Ethiopia, I coined the term monuments to philanthropic ignorance.
Oh. I just feel like that means
so what these are is when you go into these developing countries, you see somebody's attempt to help them out that is a total failure.
Yeah.
So this is one of those monuments to philanthropic ignorance in Bolivia. So we go to this community, and along the main road, they have these really nice, beautiful brick toilets.
Yeah.
And this isn't just an outhouse. They actually dug a well, put in a water system, and they were flush toilets.
Wow.
Yeah.
For high end,
Yeah. And so, but they were locked up.
Me voy a Bolivia.
And so, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, well, why are the toilets locked up? They said, because they don't work. I said, why don't they work? They have rocks in them. I was like, what? She's like, here, I'll show you. So they take us and they open up, and I look in the toilet, and it's full of these like rocks or, large gravel, about 1 inch.
Yeah. And is this like is it like a standard porcelain toilet we would see here?
Yeah, like a flush toilet. And it's got all these rocks in it.
What?
And I'm like, why in the world are there rocks in it? And so I turned to my director from Bolivia. I'm like, why would they put rocks?
People are just bored.
It's a perfectly good toilet.
Some vandalism.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's got something against toilets.
So I asked him, and he says, well, think about this, Lonnie. So they come in, they show them how to use the toilet, right? And they give them toilet paper, right?
Right.
And they say, okay, you wipe with this, and you throw it in the toilet, and then you pull the handle. So, okay, I said, yeah. He said, well, what happens when the toilet paper runs out? I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. He says, around here, they use rocks.
Look around for a nice smooth rock
to wipe. And so what do? They take the rock in with them when they go to the bathroom. They go to the bathroom, they wipe with it and throw it in the toilet.
Yeah, there you go.
And then eventually there's enough rocks in there that...
Yeah, well, it's logical. It makes sense. That's what I would do. If I ran out of toilet paper, I'd be like looking for rocks.
My brain is like, how many rocks are in the piping system? Like how many made their way down there,
Probably none of them because you have the S-band.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So.
Well, that happened in India where they had the government had built a nice, very nice toilet block, public toilet. It was like 7 or 8 different toilets, and had a nice roof on it and everything. And about a year later, they weren't working, and it was full of firewood. And everybody's like, why did they put firewood? Well, because it keeps
it dry.
full of, it kept it out of the rain, and so they just filled it up with firewood, and that was just a firewood storage thing.
Yeah.
Really, really nice firewood storage,
Yeah.
So I totally get it. That's crazy.
What's your phrase again? I need to adopt that.
Monuments
to
philanthropic ignorance.
Monuments to philanthropic ignorance. There's plenty of those.
Yeah.
Because we
good
think
intentions,
we know.
but
We think we know.
I could tell you lots of stories there. That was crazy. So one more, I'll tell you what we do in Mexico. And this is that idea of thinking about the system, the culture, what's going on, and trying to view things as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, urine and feces, we just think of them as waste. We call it waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, there's quite a bit of value there.
Truly.
Mm-hmm. And so
it gets wasted.
Yeah, that's good. There's your wasted. We're
going to have those guys on the podcast coming up next.
Or coming for you, wasted.
So, in Mexico, we work in an area that's very dry.
Okay.
And so to have flush toilets, that
doesn't make sense.
They could not comprehend us flushing 15 gallons of water.
Perfectly good drinking water down the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we did is we created what's called a dry latrine.
Okay.
And so,
I think you were telling me about this one.
Imagine just a standard like porta potty,
sure,
but up 3 steps.
Okay.
So you got to go up 3 steps to get into it.
Yeah.
That is a throne.
And when you look at the toilet, there's this divider down the middle of it.
Sure.
And so when you sit on it, the feces goes behind,
okay,
and the urine in front.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, then you go back down the stairs and you go around back and you see there's a little trap door. And where the feces drops is a big barrel or something that has dirt in it.
Okay.
And so because the feces goes in dry, into this dryness, there's no smell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or very little odor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The urine goes in front, gets caught in a bucket or a barrel or something like that. Then the urine can be used as a garden fertilizer, a crop fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then the feces, you compost that and also use it as a fertilizer.
So rad.
So,
yeah, that's cool.
Rad.
We had Sanitation 360, Jenna, on the show, or maybe, I think we interviewed her.
We interviewed her.
And they're out of Sweden, and they've got these toilets that separate the urine out. And I think in 100 years from now, we'll be looking back and saying, "Can you believe we would just
flush water
down, all that away,
perfectly good drinking water, and then combine the poop and the feces and the pee all together?"
Yeah,
and then hope and pray that the wastewater treatment people
knew what they were doing.
Somehow makes it better.
It will be. We'll look at it as a waste of resources.
Can you believe we would do that? That's I think that's the future.
It absolutely is.
And
well, you want us to try something interesting. Count how many times you flush your toilet every day.
Yeah. Oh, I think I did that math one time actually, because I live in a home that was built in early 1900s, and the toilet is still a multi-gallon flusher. I mean, she's substantial. And I thought about it between me and my husband. I was like, geez. That's why my water bill. So
you got a big bowl.
I got a big bowl.
Slowly come,
when it finally is empty, it's connected to my bathtub. When I drain the bathtub,
you're watching your water meter.
No, it really is like that. It's crazy that we do that, and it's still appalling to me that there's so much stigma still wrapped around the idea that we would utilize human waste as fertilizer, as a resource for energy, as a resource in agriculture, for regrowth. I think, we were chatting again with another friend about this. There's a large stigma of people who home compost their own waste, that we are hippies, and we're not quite there yet. Some folks are ready for that. But when that finally becomes...
Well, it's like homeschooling used to be like, whoa, you're weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's like, oh, all right.
Cool. Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, I think hopefully we'll get there with
Hopefully
the
we'll
poop,
get there.
Yeah.
So I am curious, Lonny, I want to change directions a little bit and ask you about the work on the Navajo Nation.
Okay.
What are the projects that CHOICE is doing on the Navajo Nation?
So as we went down there, one of the things that we discovered that on the whole Navajo Nation, there were only 13 grocery stores.
Wow.
And the former Bennett Freeze area, which is kind of basically from Page down to Flagstaff, really only one good grocery store with produce.
Wow.
And the produce was not very good quality and was very expensive.
Yeah.
Now we were down there in, November, December. So, not ideal times, but as we talked to the people, most of the people didn't have much produce. And so, as we started working, we hired a Navajo woman to be our director down there.
Awesome.
And as we talked with her and the community leaders, we thought, food security is a big one. We can grow some gardens. The climate's pretty harsh there.
Yeah.
It's hot, it's dry. During the summer, the wind blows a lot. It's sandy. So we thought if we could take some greenhouses down there, there were some down there. And so they're called hoop houses, the kinds that we do. And so they're growing their own food now.
Cool.
And the idea is that they'll be able to provide their own vegetables, but then they can start selling them. And so it'll be an economic boost as well as a nutritional boost.
Right on.
Then also we found out that when the Bennett Freeze was lifted, there was almost $4 million, about $3.5 million put in an escrow fund for those people to renovate their homes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's not a lot.
But most of that money's still sitting there.
Oh.
Wow.
And so you ask, well, why? Isn't there need? Yeah, there's tremendous need. Couple big problems. Number one, the red tape to get the money out was, it's just horrendous. Number two, the money is only for materials, not for labor. Most of these people, they aren't wealthy enough to pay for somebody to hire labor. And it's going to cost them a lot more to bring labor in on the Navajo Nation because there aren't a lot of resources there. So they may have to bring somebody from Flagstaff.
Wow.
And so, somebody who can either work locally in Flagstaff or drive out on these dirt roads, sand roads, so.
Hard pressed to find somebody who's willing to do that at a price that.
So we're working actually with the USDA.
Cool.
I was going to say, there's got to be some bureaucrat with the keys to that that lockbox with money in it, right?
Yeah. Again, we're working with the Navajo Hopi Land Commission, which was the agency who was the steward of the money. Yeah. We're working with the local governments. They're called chapters, and helping them do an assessment as to what needs are there and what those needs are. And then with the USDA, they're providing money for us to do leadership training and organizational training so that the community leaders know how to access the money for their members. So,
well, that's just, it's a tremendous amount of effort and work going into that. And, we talk a lot about education efforts because I think one of the main obstacles that a lot of communities face is just the know-how.
Right.
There's so much that communities don't know about how to access resources. And how do you cut that red tape? And it takes somebody to say, here's how we can help you do that. So amazing that CHOICE can step in and be a resource to access resources. So awesome. And a great way too. We were chatting a little bit about this at dinner that, here in the United States, we're so privileged.
Yeah.
So privileged with so many amazing things. And at the same time, we're not immune to a variety of issues, whether that's sanitation related or food droughts. They just exist. And sometimes it takes a keen eye to identify those areas and say, a little bit like Wasted's doing, definitely like Choice is doing, saying, how can we innovate? How can we solve or find solutions that work with what's already working here, with what's already happening, and not and avoid some monumental philanthropic. What's the last word?
Monuments to philanthropic ignorance.
Ignorance is the last word.
Yeah, and
avoid those.
And we often assume that we have all the answers.
Yeah.
MPI.
Yeah, there you go. But the best answers are developed by the people themselves.
Exactly.
They know what resources they have. They know what their problems are.
Yep.
Sometimes they just need somebody to talk them through the process of thinking and recognizing that. And that's really what we try and do, is help people solve their own problems.
Well, and you guys are also the bridge that helps navigate that, the red tape and open those
channels.
Those channels, right?
Yeah.
So that's half the battle, right? It's just finding the right guy with the key to the lockbox with the money in it.
It is a large portion of who you know and how you can be connected. So amazing that Choice is doing all the work that you're doing here in the United States, but also across the world, globally, and in all sectors. I mean, that is just no small project to say, yeah, we'll try our best to help you with whatever you got. Throw whatever you've got at us, and we'll do what we can.
Well, we appreciate you. You actually hooked us up with people in Peru. Our Peru project is we're planning on going down in May.
Awesome.
Hopefully, there's not a civil war going on. We've been watching the news.
Yeah,
and,
it's a little bit scary.
Yeah,
but hey, we've had civil wars here too. Eventually it works out, right? So I think we'll be down there in Chinchero and working with the community there, and we've already have I think we have about 16 families identified that in that Chinchero area that we're going to start building toilets. And so that was key. That was Choice Humanitarian, and Lonny, you helped connect us with the right people, and we appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Just another community you serve.
Yeah, and we look forward to other areas. If it's got toilets, ZuLoo wants to be there.
It's true.
So
it's true.
You got plenty of need, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Lonny, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute delight. So glad to have you here. I'll have you back anytime. More anecdotes, more. Love to. Yeah.
And you're local. You're close. You're just down the road.
There you go.
Away. Love it.
Well, I'm going to leave you some homework.
Okay.
So what you need to do is you need to draw a 2x2 grid.
Okay.
And on the top, on the columns, you'll have rich on one and poor on the other.
Mm.
And then the rows, you'll have riches on the top one and poverty on the bottom one.
Mm.
And then what you'll do is you'll fill in those boxes.
Mm.
So the top box is going to be the riches of the rich.
Mm.
And then you'll have the riches of the poor.
Mm.
And then you'll have the poverty of the rich and the poverty of the poor.
Okay. I got that.
And do that and think about that.
Mm.
I'm going to do that and think about that.
It sounds like a worksheet. Sounds like, it is homework.
That's homework.
Okay, we'll do homework and we'll report. Return and report.
There you go.
Report. I can see how Choice is using that to not offer solutions, but help get gears started in thinking about what are our resources and solutions here.
It's the intercultural exchange part of Choice. Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
You bet.
Lonny, awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for joining in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Remember to share this episode if you liked it, if you heard something that resonated with you. Share it with your friends and family. Subscribe. Hit that little red button or purple button, wherever you're listening. And
any kind of button.
Any kind of button that there is. And if it says subscribe or a little check, just hit that. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the ZuLoo Poodcast. Follow us on social media at our links in the show notes below. To learn more, visit our website, ZuLoo.org. If you liked the podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. For even more ZuLoo fun, send us an email with your toilet stories to podcast@zuloo.com for a chance to be featured on the podcast. This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.